hiring a manager can be a challenge. But I think there's no greater challenge than hiring a manager to run your kitchen, whether that's a kitchen manager or a chef. Let me start off by sharing with you what you should be looking for to make this process much easier. Now, before I do that, do know that having started coaching independent restaurants back in 2003, restaurant owners and managers, I've seen a lot. And I've literally talked to thousands of restaurant owners and managers, restaurant teams, culinary, front of house, doesn't matter. And you know what? Over the past 20 years, one thing has not changed, and that's the challenge of finding the right kitchen manager or chef for your restaurant. Now, it's pretty easy to think you found the right person, right? You're on a search. You're trying to find the right person to take over your kitchen. Why is it so easy to think we found the right person? Well, sometimes you're in a bind. Like, man, I need somebody today. We've already been running short-staffed. I'm going into season. I need somebody right now. So you're in a bind and you kind of see the shiny object, that smile across from you that has a pretty good resume and experience. And you think, I'm going to hire that person. Sometimes you're just tired. You lost your kitchen manager. You've been in the kitchen for 80 hours. It's not your forte. You don't want to be there anymore. And man, the first person that can fog a mirror that says they'll accept a position, we often take them, thinking, oh, no, I really found the right person. Sometimes you're looking for a lifeline. It's just, oh my gosh, there's chaos. There's crazy. Maybe you're like me personally. I don't belong in a kitchen. Now I can run a kitchen. I can order on budget and par levels. I can schedule on budget and staffing guides. I can open and close every station off opening and closing side work checklist, but I have zero culinary skills. Like, I can work fry and garmage and wheel in an 8-minute ticket time all day long, but I can't saute. I can't grill. Knife skills are horrid. I don't have any knowledge of bases of, French sauces and soups and things. I don't have that. And maybe you're like me and you're like, man, I just need a culinary pro because I'm fearful of my kitchen. I don't have that knowledge. Sometimes you just really want to find a person quickly. Like today, you're impatient. You've been doing this long enough that, man, how could I do any worse than the last person? And you hire the first person who walks in the door. That doesn't matter why you think you found the right person. The reality is we more than often pick the wrong person. Like, man, I think I got the right person. Then it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Why do I hire another kitchen manager or chef? They're always the wrong person. Well, we've got to change that. Let me give you an example of what I mean. Even for one of my highest level members, a Mastery Plus / member mentor, somebody went through my restaurant transformation intensive program, John Dempster. Now I'm going to tell you right now, I've got nothing but love and praise for this guy even before we met. He's a systems guy to begin with, already had budgets and recipe costing cards. All he was missing was the why you do things, and that other things are possible. Instead of hitting a 34% food cost, which because that's a national average, what could his restaurant do based on his location, price point, style of service, and so on, and his core values, of course. And I can tell you that during one of our coaching calls, it was time to move on his chef, meaning have his chef move on. This is somebody started in the line with him, side by side, elbow to elbow, shoulder to shoulder. Somebody he really cares about and likes. It's a very small community in Virginia. But as we implemented more systems, as we started to ratchet up our expectations of our management team, Chef wasn't coming along. And in fact, truth be told, Chef was probably unhappy. And it took a long time for John to come up with the conclusion it was time to have the discussion with this person who was a good friend. He moved the person on, and through serendipity or whatever it may be, some phone calls, next thing you know, there's this ideal candidate comes out of nowhere. Like he didn't even get to talk to a bunch of people. Hell, he talked to one. This was the right person. Won a connection, connected him, because he doesn't have a large pool from to draw from, because it's a small community on the Chesapeake Bay in Virginia, like small summer resort kind of town. And so he got on a Zoom with this person. He talked to them for hours. He had him talk to the GM. He did some research, like, man, this is the right guy. I've got to move on this. So we did a coaching call, and Adam is general manager, and we're on a call. We're like, we need to move on this guy. Okay, let's move on the guy. What can we pay for? ... We think we found an ideal guy. Well, he brought him on. And it wasn't weeks, if not just a couple months, when finally John said, This guy talked a great game, but he ain't delivering. I've got to let him go. Even to a point where in their off season, because he had the time, John, the owner, after letting him go, went back in the kitchen to implement all the systems that weren't being used anymore because this guy really wasn't what he said he was. Now, he had patience because John's out of season. He is now in a process of hiring another chef, and thinks he found a good guy. Now, does that sound familiar to you? Have you had those similar situations? Doesn't matter. And again, I'm talking about a restaurant pro getting hit with the same situation everybody gets. So what should you look for in a kitchen pro when you're going to go through the interview process? You should look for somebody with a great attitude, somebody who fits your company culture. Culture is extremely important. You got to be finding out from that candidate what kind of culinary knowledge they have. Now, culinary knowledge is going to be very important or less important depending on the concept you have. If you're looking for a kitchen manager, knife skills are important, but maybe not a whole knowledge of French cuisine or how to break down a chicken completely, you name it, right? Whereas if you're a fine dining restaurant, man, you've got to have, that's a part of the art, which you've got to train others on. So what kind of culinary does it match your restaurant? What kind of knowledge for numbers and systems do they have, right? From food costs, recipe costing cards, inventory, calculating yields, scheduling on budget, controlling labor on budget, and so many other things. So important that your potential kitchen leader either has a general understanding or at least is willing to learn. When you're talking to this candidate, what kind of experience do they have training other team members? Because quite honestly, training is very important. The higher you move up in the food chain, the less you're going to touch a knife. You've got to manage and train people. You got to figure out if they're willing to learn. Because again, it's not so important, I guess, depending on your concept, how deep their knowledge is, if they're willing to learn. And that's important because you can provide them the right training, especially on the systems and number. You got to figure out, are they willing to do things your way? All too often, these culinary professionals come in and go, it's my way or the highway. Well, go open your own damn restaurant. They've got to be willing to follow your system, your ordering system, your prep system, your recipe card system, your stuff. That doesn't mean they can't bring improvements and you can't bend. But they can't throw your stuff away. They can't change things without your permission. Does this candidate have an understanding, really an understanding that it is your restaurant, not theirs? And the buck stops with you from budget to all the major decisions. Now, you can give them the authority to make certain decisions, but anything that's not in their authority, they've got to check with you. And all things being equal, I often want to hire the person who's willing to learn, who'll do things my way, and is looking to move up. And when I say looking to move up, instead of hiring the seasoned chef, I want that sous chef looking for the opportunity to move up. Instead of that kitchen manager, seasoned kitchen manager, I want that, line supervisor is looking for their opportunity to move up. Why? Because ultimately I can teach them my systems my way. I want the person who gets excited about the opportunity to move up rather than the person who's stuck in their ways saying it's my way or the highway. If you'd like to ask me questions directly about what I just taught you, be sure to join me every Friday on YouTube live at 8 a.m. Pacific time, travel schedule permitting, where I get you motivated about your upcoming weekend, but more importantly, I answer your questions live.